So on page 12 of our lecture for our Math 130 students, we have computing compound interest. So here, compound interest refers to the compounding periods that happen per year. So let's just think about this for a second. So if we have something that happens annually, well, that would happen for n is equal to 1 since it happens one time a year. And now if something was monthly, well, that would tell us that our n value would be equal to 12 since there's 12 months in 1 year. And we also have it quarterly. And that's for n is equal to 4, because quarterly means it's going to happen 4 times a year. So those are the most common ones that we have. And so for our P, that's our initial principal amount. R is the interest rate. N is the number of times it's being compounded by year, as if it were annually, monthly, or quarterly. And T is the time in years that the money is invested. So looking at number 1, we have Elijah accumulated $3,000 in credit card debt. If the interest rate is 10% per year and he does not make any payments for 2 years, how much will he owe on this debt in 2 years for quarterly compounding? Round your answer to the nearest 2 decimal places. So here it tells us that we are compounding quarterly. So if it's quarterly, that's going to be our number that we are going to have for our n. So now we have the value that n is equal to 4 that we are plugging in. Now some of the other values that we can plug in is that we have 3,000. So 3,000 represents the amount he accumulated on his credit card debt. So you can think of that as your initial amount, which represents our P value. And it also talks about the rate is 10%. So here my rate is equal to a 10%, but you always write it as a decimal, so it's going to be a 0.10 or a 0.1. And here it says for 2 years. So that's telling me that my T is equal to 4. So we have that our principal amount is equal to 3,000. Our T is equal to 2. Maybe I didn't write that very nicely. There we go. T is equal to 2. And our rate is equal to a 0.10 or a 0.1, right? So now we have this equation that we can plug it into. So we have that this is going to equal to my principal amount, which is my 3,000, plus 1, or 1 plus, and now my R value that I'm plugging in is going to be that 0.10, and the N value that I'm plugging in here is 4. So the N value again here is 4. That's how many times it's being compounded per year, and T, which we said was a 2. So once I do this calculation, I'm going to have $1.025, and to the 4 times 2 power is 8. So now I can just plug this into my calculator. And I'm going to get this as a 3655.20863. So it specifically says to round your answer to the 2 decimal places. So 2 decimal places would be the 2 and the 0. So that 3rd decimal place tells us where to round off to. So here we are going to have the total amount of $3,655.21 since we are rounding to the 2 decimal places. So here, if you have $3,000 in credit card debt, you add a total of $655.21 of interest. So that's how long you think it's going to take for you to pay that off is in 2 years. For number 2, we have Ebony invested $16,000 in a savings account. If the interest rate is 6% per year, how much will be in the account in 5 years for monthly compounding? Round your answer to 2 decimal places. So now here we're saving, but it's still going to be the same formula, so that we have A of T is equal to, and that formula was P of 1 plus R over N to the N times T value. I just want to make sure that I wrote that down. So we have our amounts here. So we have our principal amount. So P is equal to our 16,000. We have our rate. So that translates into a rate being 0.06. And in 5 years, well, years represents my T, so my T is equal to 5. And here for monthly compounding, so that's going to be my N value. And since it's monthly, well, how many months in a year? 12 months is in 1 year. So I'm going to write 12. Okay. So now, plugging it into this equation, I have my A of T is equal to my principal amount, that's 16,000. And my R value here is a 0.06. And my N value here is a 12. And my N value again is 12 times my T value, which is a 5. So 16,000. And 1 plus my fraction of a 0.06 divided by 12 is a 1.005 to the 12 times 5 power, which is 60. So I'm going to have 16,000 times 0.1005 to the power of 60, and that gives me 21,581 and 60 cents. So that's great. She is going to grow from $16,000 to $21,581.60. So she's definitely making really good money. In 5 years, that's the total amount that she's going to have in that account. Now for compounded continuously, this is going to be a different equation because it's the word continuously. That kind of tells you that you're going to be using that E because E is continuous, right? It's just kind of like pi that's never ending, never repeating, so it's a continuous amount. So for number 3, Mia accumulated $12,000 in credit card debt. If the interest rate is 4% per year and she does not make any payments for 8 years, how much will she owe on this debt in 8 years by compounding continuously, round to the nearest cent? So here, because it says compounded continuously, we know that we're going to be using the equation A of T is equal to P times E to the R times T power. So we have our principal amount. So my P is equal to my 12,000. I have my rate. So my rate is equal to a 4%, which is equal to a 0.04. And here I have my time, and my time is equal to 8. So So plugging it into this equation, I have my A of t is equal to my 12,000. That's going to get multiplied by E, and my R value is a 0.04, and my T value is an 8 value. So 0.04 times 8 gives me a 0.32. So 12,000 times E to the 0.32 power, that's going to give me, if I'm rounding to the nearest cent, 16525.53317. So remember, I'm rounding to the nearest cent. So since I'm talking about money, I'm rounding to the 2 decimal places. So this 3 is going to tell me to leave that alone. So I have in dollars 16,525.53 as my final answer. For number 4, it says Trevon deposits 5,000 in an IRA. What would be the value of this investment in 25 years if the investment is earning 8% per year and is compounded continuously? Round to the nearest cent. So again, I'm going to use my equation. And the reason why is because it's the word continuously. So my A of t is equal to my, just want to make sure I write it correctly, P times E to the R times T power. Because it's continuously, I use that E value. So I have my principal amount, that is 5,000. I have my time, which is 25 years. And it says my percent, so that's going to be my rate. So my rate as a decimal is a 0.08. And so I'm rounding. So I'm going to have my A of t is equal to that principal amount times E to the R times my T value. And 0.08 times 25 gives me 2. That's a little bit easier to enter into the calculator. So 5,000 times my E value squared gives me 36945.28049. And since I'm rounding to the nearest cent, and I go 2 decimal places, so that 0 tells me to leave it alone. So I'm going to have 36,945.28 as the value of this account after 25 years. The next thing we're going to be looking at is calculating the resultant values using exponential growth and decay models. So now our formula is going to change slightly different. We don't just say it's our principal amount anymore. We say A naught, which is our initial amount, okay? So that's what kind of changes in this formula. So for number 1, it says Jada is a researcher at the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and she is trying to understand the behavior of a new and dangerous virus. She starts her experiment with 24 viruses that grow at 75% per hour. She would check on the virus in 12 hours. How many viruses will she find? Round your answers to the nearest whole number. So you know that you're going to be using this equation. So I have my amount is going to be my initial times e to the r times t value. So your initial amount that you start off with is 24. So your initial amount is going to be 24. So a naught is going to be equal to 24. Here I have my rate. So my rate is going to be a 75%, which translates into a 0.75. And she is going to check on the virus in 12 hours. So that's a time. So t is equal to 12. So how many viruses will she find? So here is what's going to happen at the very end. How many will she have total? Well, if my initial amount is 24, and my rate value is a 0.75, and my t value is equal to 12, well, 0.75 times 12 is equal to a 9. So 24 times e to the 9th power is going to give me 194474.0143. So if I'm rounding to the nearest whole number, this would be my nearest whole number. So this 0 tells you to leave it alone. So 194474. So 194,474 viruses. So in 12 hours, that's how much viruses she's going to have. That is a lot of viruses, especially if it's growing at a rate of 75%. For number 2, in the last 10 years, the population of Indonesia has grown at a rate of 1.12% per year to 258,316,051. If this rate continues, what will be the population in 10 more years? Round your answer to the nearest whole number. So for this equation, or for this problem, we're going to use that same formula. So I wrote down my equation, and I have, a naught is equal to e times e to the power of r times t. So we have our years. And for our years, we're going to have that t is equal to 10. And we have the rate of 1.12%. So if I'm changing it to a decimal, then I'm going to have that r is equal to a 0.0112. And it says to this much. And this is your total amount that you have. So that's going to be your initial amount. And if this rate continues, what will be the population in 10 more years? Round your answer to the nearest whole number. So now we are going to have that our initial value times e to the r times t, where we have a of naught is equal to 258,316,051. We have our r value, which is going to be our 0.0112, and we have my t value, which is going to be 10. So I have a naught times e to the r times t being 258,316,051 times e to the r and times my t-value being a 10. So now I'm just going to plug this into my calculator. And when I plug that in, I'm going to get 288,929,825.2. So if it says to round to the nearest whole number, so the nearest whole number is here, which tells us to leave that alone. So this is going to be the population in 10 more years. And that is the end of this section. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to email me. Thank you.